Once a proud legion formed to help reunite the human race under one empire. Their pursuit for perfection consumed them and gave way to decadence and depravity. Now seeking their own ambitions for new sensations, there is nothing left but a damned few. Their name was the Emperor's Children. In the 31st millennium, the Emperor of Mankind created 18 Primarchs to lead an endeavor that would soon be known as the Great Crusade. At this point in time, mankind was spread wide and far throughout the galaxy. But due to a plague of massive warp storms, all human colonies were unable to communicate with each other, and all thrived in their own small, isolated populations. Once the storms cleared up, the Emperor was ready to embark on reuniting all human worlds into one empire called the Imperium of Man. To lead this expedition, his 18 Primarchs were created, genetically perfected individuals meant to be leaders, commanders, and warfighters. And an odd twist, these Primarchs were stolen while still in their infancy, and shrouded throughout the galaxy. Each Primarch landed on a planet and grew to adulthood, all molded and raised differently. As the Emperor traveled the stars reuniting worlds, he would slowly discover his children one by one, each joining his crusade, and leading their own army of super soldiers built from each Primarch's unique gene seed, called the Space Marines. One of these Primarchs was a man named Fulgrim. Fulgrim's pod landed on a mining world that was unforgiving and limited on resources for the population to survive on. Orbiting a binary star surrounded by a nebula dust cloud, there was no night and day cycle, only a perpetual twilight. This planet's name was Chemos. The people there only had time for one thing: work. Every hour of the day was built around working to provide for all survival of the population. There was no time for leisure and happiness, only work. When Fulgrim was discovered in his pod, the people considered to end his life, to not have another mouth to feed. But it was decided to spare his life and allow him to be raised by a member of the group that found him. The boy proved to be more than just an ordinary human. He became a legend. At an early age, he went to work in the mines and fulfilled all the obligations of an adult worker. Over time, he proved to be very intuitive, and went from a lowly laborer to being an executive in Chemos' government, and was able to improve the working and living conditions for the people, which yielded a better life for all. This allowed more leisure time, and others to explore the arts and the finer things in life. Then the day his true father, the Emperor of Mankind, came, and united him with the Third Legion appropriately named, the Emperor's Children. Much like all his children, Fulgrim went on to aid in the Great Crusade. The Third Legion, like all the legions, was built from the gene seed of their Primarch and recruited from Terra itself before the discovery of Fulgrim. These Marines were drawn from the male children of noble families. Some nobles saw this as a legion holding their sons hostage, and others saw it as an honor. Unlike their brethren, the Emperor's children led troops of the Imperial army in battle, rather than serving as shock troops alongside them. The Legion had a unique ability to see and understand the strengths and weaknesses present within the very diverse Imperial armies, allowing them to better command and strategize. And they were also the first to be given the honor of bearing the Imperial Palatine Aquila exclusively, given by the Emperor himself. No other legion would decorate their arms or armor with this symbol until after the Horus Heresy. At some point before the discovery of their Primarch, a viral blight began to spread within the gene stocks, destroying large amounts of gene seed, making it difficult to replenish their legion's numbers. The gene seed is the valued element in the creation of new Space Marines. Without it, a legion or chapter will just dwindle and die out slowly, as their numbers will never be able to replenish. This would leave very few options to keep the future of the Legion alive and growing. The process of excising the seed from the dead Marines fallen on the battlefield worked, but with the nature of warfare, it wasn't always possible to recover it. The Legion eventually dropped below strength enough to be rendered almost inoperable. Then, their gene father was discovered. When Fulgrim was found by his father, he instantly dropped to his knees and swore to his cause, and joined him in the Great Crusade. He then was taken back to Terra to meet his gene sons and take command of his army. By this point, his legion was down to only 200 warriors left, and he addressed them by saying, "You are the Emperor's chosen, his heralds, his warriors, his children, for this is only the beginning." The Legion went on to enact the Primarch's will to spread the Imperium of Man, and they would then wear the colors of purple, bearing the eagle-winged claw. Being that they were so few of a legion and now able to replenish their gene stocks, Fulgrim was put under the mentorship of his brother Horus. For a time, the Emperor's children would fight side by side with their brother legion, the Luna Wolves, two legions that would complement each other well, one being swift and brutal, the other being patient, flexible, and subtle. The bonds between the legion's warriors would be formed and nigh unbreakable. From this point on, Fulgrim and his legion became consumed with the idea of perfection, and pushing his legion to be the shining paragons they should strive to live up to. After decades of fighting by the side of their brothers, the Luna Wolves, the Emperor's children were finally at capacity to be on their own, and continued to spread the Imperial truth to the galaxy, and was given command of the 28th Expeditionary Fleet. The Legion on their own would bring dozens of warriors into the rule of the Emperor, and then would come the one world they landed on that would have the Legion make a darker turn for the future. When the Legion landed upon the world known as Laren, the planet was home to an alien race called the Lair, a serpent-like race that was not very fond of sharing their resource-rich ocean world with the Imperium. After diplomatic means failed, violence was the final answer. At the pinnacle of this war, just before conquering the Lair, Fulgrim would happen to discover an interesting blade within a large temple. The temple appeared to hold a form of religious importance, decorated with symbols and signs of their god. Fulgrim would soon discover that they were all guarding and protecting a peculiar artifact in the form of a beautiful and elegant sword. Claiming the sword, Fulgrim and his legion departed, but this was the beginning of the end. What Fulgrim and his legion were ignorant of was that the temple was dedicated to one of the four ruinous powers, Slaanesh, and the blade he had claimed was home to a powerful demon of She Who Thirsts. The demon would begin to whisper and slowly corrupt Fulgrim to do its bidding. This is around the point where the Great Rebellion began, known as the Horus Heresy. At some point, Fulgrim's brother and former mentor, Horus, would be corrupted by the ruinous powers and rally half the legions to his cause to overthrow the Emperor, one of these legions being the Emperor's children. During this time, the Legion's Marines, and even those that worked alongside the Legion, began to pursue unnatural and often darker sensations and interests, such as one known as Lucius. He prided his ability with the blade and worked tirelessly to perfect his skill, that he began to scar himself to mark his victories in battle. Other members would follow suit in strange and depraved acts as well. The chief apothecary started to perform surgical augmentations upon his battles. Alterations would lead to some new enhancements, mostly derived from the Layer's biology, that would grant the Legion's warriors new abilities. Then came the maraviglia. During the Great Crusade, the Emperor had placed different civilians on the Legion's fleets to document and record the deeds of the Legions. They were called remembrancers, and were made up of writers, artisans, photographers, and documenters. They were not immune to the calls of Slaanesh either. One in particular was named Kinska. She was present the day the Emperor's children entered the Lair Temple. She heard the sounds of the music they made, and bared witness to the alien's architecture and symbols that decorated it. She became obsessed with it, and began to craft what she would call her ultimate orchestral opus. Kinska went on to create new instruments in an attempt to recreate the sounds of the Lair. She wanted to put on a show that would feature not only the music of the Lair, but their art and imagery. When all her dedication and preparations were completed, she would perform the opus on board Fulgrim's own battle barge, a pride of the Emperor, in the main theater, La Fanise. All were in attendance, including the Legion's warriors and Fulgrim himself. As the show started, the cacophony of sound began to weaken the barrier between real space and the world. The sounds from these instruments would cause many to feel disoriented, stimulated, and murderous. The music was overwhelming and compelled the audience to descend into an orgy of both sensual and violent hedonism. Demons of the Dark Prince poured through the broken veil and joined in and continued the slaughter and chaos. Kinska kept conducting the show, now floating and flailing around and contorting in unnatural ways. Mutations ran rampant, altering forms of people with new limbs, or turning them into gibbering fleshy masses. The Legion's Marines, overcome by the sensations and sounds, joined the destruction, and several took up the instruments to keep the song going. The noise produced from these instruments proved to be more than sound, but waves of destruction that could murder and destroy and be used as weapons. All the while, Fulgrim, now fully corrupted, applauded and praised the performance. In the aftermath, all that was left was a gory, bloody mess of remains of what used to be an audience and performers. The Marines with their new weapons would be called the Noise Marines from here forward. The Legion was no longer the noble and proud Emperor's children, but now a legion of corrupt, murderous monsters. They no longer would seek to further the Emperor's will, but pursue their own decadent desires, seeking hedonistic self-indulgence and newer, unique sensations, and would become the pawns of Slaanesh. The event that would follow the maraviglia would be the atrocity of Isvan III, and the drop site massacre on Isvan V. The atrocity was a full virus bombing of the planet to try and rid all those loyal still to the Emperor and the traitor legions from them. so that only those loyal to Horus and his calls remain. After that, a plan was hatched to finally bring the full might of Horus's rebellion to the forefront and cripple the loyal legions of the Emperor. Multiple legions were dispatched to put a swift end to Horus's treachery on Isvan V. The legions descended upon the planet, but unknown to those still loyal, the traitors were planning a reveal of just how many have joined Horus's side. They all turned and brother fought brother in battle, and the end was the slaughter of many Marines and the death of the first Primarch casualty of war, the death of Ferrus Manus, Primarch of the Iron Hands, felled by Fulgrim himself and once close friend. Many other events would occur, all slowly leading up to the final confrontation with Horus and the Emperor in the Siege of Terra. When the heresy was over, the remains of the traitor legions would scatter and seek refuge within the Eye of Terror. Today, the Emperor's children are barely a legion anymore, and are all mostly broken into smaller war bands traveling the galaxy in pursuit of new sensations and worlds to corrupt and sacrifice to their patron god. Some would join and aid the Black Legion, formerly the Luna Wolves, and Abaddon the Despoiler's Black Crusades. The whereabouts of Fulgrim is unknown as well. After his ascension to demonhood, it is theorized that he lives now on a demon world of his own creation. Wherever the remains of the Legion are today, they only live to serve their own will and depravity. They will land upon worlds and desecrate them and take its populations for their own dark uses. When a warband of them lands on your world, pray death comes first, rather than take you alive. Thank you all for watching, and leave a like, tell me what you think of the video, and subscribe and click the bell. And as always, stay jolly.